All right, you guys. So today I want to do another quick video review for you, and we're doing this a little bit on the fly in a different way today. So I came across this article from Business Insider earlier titled "A Highly Successful Digital Nomad Gave an Honest Account of How Lonely and Depressing the Lifestyle Can Be." So, first off, if you don't know what a digital nomad is, basically it's someone who works remotely and can make income from anywhere in the world, more than likely from their original country, but maybe not, could be a different country. And basically, they bring that to a new country. So they can work anywhere they want across the world, and they have location freedom. Although they don't always have time freedom, right? Like you could be working like graveyard shift because you're in a different time zone. That's another topic for another day. But that gives you an idea of what a digital nomad is. Now, this article is based on a YouTube video. I'm going to go through this section and then just comment on it as it goes.
Just get through it. But because you have nothing, you have probably no money, you have no business, you have no job. You like Jordan Peterson said this. I saw it somewhere. Like the reason people are depressed because they have nothing. They don't have a girlfriend. They don't have a or boyfriend. They don't have a. You need stuff. You need or a family. You need things around you. You need to build a life for yourself. You don't build a life for yourself.
Just already, like, just to interject there, he probably, maybe he doesn't believe exactly what he's saying. He's talking about how most people feel, right? Because eventually you'll come to find out that you don't need anything outside of you, right? Like it's super cheesy, right? But like it's the whole like love yourself first thing. So if you find that peace and everything you need is already inside you. If you're always looking outside of you, right? That means that you're always seeking external happiness, and you can't just create it for yourself. And the funniest part is that's the only way you're actually going to create it. Everyone's always seeking, this thing, like I need something to make me feel whole, to make me feel happy. So they need the girlfriend, they need the job, they need this, that. And all these things come from you creating the happy person, the person that loves himself, basically. So let's keep going with this video.
You'll be depressed. So if you're alone in Asia in a hostel, looking at the ceiling, and you don't have any money coming in, you don't have a girlfriend, you don't. Of course, you're depressed. It's logic. But back then, if you're in the moment, you think there's not logic. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And also, I think I started getting like anxiety, and I think I started going a little bit crazy. Where I think travel can make you insane. And I know this because I know that there's like digital nomads that they kill themselves. And I haven't checked like the comparison with like baseline people, like suicide rate. But I have a hunch, especially in the beginning when it was a very new thing, like 10 years ago, that it can be very psychologically taxing, and you're alone a lot back then when you travel alone. There was no other digital nomads back then a lot. So you're in a strange culture. You look different than everybody. Like I was in Asia, like everybody's really nice in Thailand, but you're not part of the culture. You're traveling around. You're hopping from city to city. You don't have a home anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You feel disrooted.
And you're constantly an outcast in that you're different from everybody else.
Yes, exactly. But people treat you like Thailand. People are so nice, but you still feel like outcast. And then I think the digital nomads I met then were all kind of like, it was like shady business, But they were like vigilantes because it was a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like one guy was selling illegal drugs. It was an American guy, was selling illegal drugs via UPS to Americans, on his website. There were like a lot of drop shippers doing shady stuff. There's a lot of shady things going on there, and they didn't look like very balanced people. They didn't look like people I wanted to hang with, So I also felt outcast from other foreigners in Thailand, other digital nomads. And I was like, man, I made a big mistake. And then I went back to Holland, and then I got even more depressed.
You said digital nomad. What is digital nomad? What is that way of life? What is the philosophy there? And the history of the movement.
I struck upon it on accident because I was like, I'm going to graduate university and then I need to get out of here. I'll fly to Asia because I've been before in Asia. I studied in Korea in 2009, like study exchange. So I was like, Asia is easy, Thailand's easy. And I'll just go there, figure things out. And it's cheap. It's very cheap. Chiang Mai, I would live like for $150 per month rent for like a private room. Pretty good. So I struck upon this on accident. I was like, okay, there's other people on laptops working on their startup or working remotely. Back then, nobody worked remotely, but they worked on their businesses, right? And they would, live in like Colombia or Thailand or Vietnam or Bali. they would live kind of like in more cheap places, and it looked like a very adventurous life. Like you travel around, you build your business. There's no pressure from like your home society, right? Like you're American, so you get pressure from American society telling you kind of what to do. Like you need to buy a house or you need to do this stuff. I had this in Holland too, and you can get away from this pressure. You can kind of feel like you're free. You're kind of there's nobody telling you what to do, but that's also why you start feeling like you go crazy because you are free. You're disattached from anything and anybody. You're disattached from your culture. You're disattached from the culture you're probably in because you're staying very short.
I think Franz Kafka said, "I'm free, therefore I'm lost."
Man, that's so true. Yeah, that's exactly the point. And yeah, freedom is like it's the definition of no constraints, right? Like anything is possible. You can go anywhere. And everybody's like, oh, that must be super nice, you know, like freedom, you must be very happy. And it's the opposite. Like, I don't think that makes you happy. I think constraints probably make you happy. And that's a big lesson I learned then.
But what were they making for money? What? So you're saying they were doing shady stuff at that time?
And that actually just goes back to the point that I was saying, right? And I think to an extent, like some constraints can be helpful for you. With the freedom holding you back though, like you might have heard the term lost puppy before, right? And it's like you're looking for yourself. You're trying to find yourself, right? Like there's a lot of people that are trying to find themselves. And it goes back to what I said earlier, right? Like you're looking externally, for that thing to complete you, right? And I know it's so cheesy, right? But you've had it all along, and it's about actually unlocking it. Unlocking that thing, also unlocking the love for yourself, the respect for yourself, right? Because like he's saying, like if you could travel to as many countries as you want. Although if you're not at home with yourself, then you're always going to feel lost. Let's keep going.
For me, because I was more like a developer, I wanted to make startups kind of, and it was like there was like drugs being shipped to America, like diet pills and stuff, like non-FDA approved stuff, and they would like there was no like they were like they would sit with beers and they would laugh about like all the dodgy shit kind of they're doing,
That part of
kind of vibe, like kind of sleazy e-com vibe. I'm not saying all e-com is sleazy, but
right,
but this vibe.
It could be a vibe, and your vibe was more build
make
cool shit
stuff.
that's ethical.
The guys with sports cars in Dubai, these people,
Yes.
E-com, like, oh, bro, you got to drop ship.
Yeah.
And you'll make 100 million a month. Like, those people, it was this shit. And I was like, this is not my people.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of those individual components.
No judgment.
But there's a foundation that's not quite ethical. What is that? I don't know what that is. But yeah, I get you.
No, I don't want to judge. It was more, I know that for me, it wasn't my world. It wasn't my subculture. I wanted to make cool shit, but they also think their cool shit is cool. So, but I wanted to make like real like startups, and that was my thing. I would read Hacker News, like Y Combinator, and they were making cool stuff, so I wanted to make cool stuff.
I mean, that's a pretty cool way of life. Just if you romanticize it for a moment.
It's very romantic, man. And also like travel memories, like you go from city to city, and it feels like it's kind of like jet set life. Like it feels very beautiful. Like you're seeing a lot of cool cities. And
what was your favorite place that you remember you visited?
I think still like Bangkok is the best place, and Bangkok and Chiang Mai. I think Thailand is very special. Like I've been to the other places, like I've been to Vietnam and I've been to South America and stuff. I still think Thailand wins in how nice people are, how easy of a life people have there.
Everything's cheap.
Yeah,
good.
Well, Bangkok is getting expensive now, but Chiang Mai is still cheap. I think when you're starting out, it's a great place. Man, the air quality sucks. It's a big problem. So, and it's quite hot, but that's a very cool place.
Pros and cons.
I love Brazil also.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend is Brazilian, but I do love, not just because of that, but I like Brazil. The problem still is the safety issue, like it's like in America, like it's localized. It's hard for Europeans to understand like safety is localized to specific areas. So if you go to the right areas, it's amazing. Brazil's amazing. If you go to the wrong areas, like maybe you die.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
But it's not true in Europe. So in Europe, it's much more.
That's
like,
true. That's
more average.
You're right. It's more averaged out. You quoted Freya Stark, quote, "To awaken quite alone in a strange town is one of the most pleasant sensations in the world."
Yeah.
Do you remember a time you awoken in a strange town and felt like that? We're talking about small towns or big towns, or
man, anywhere. I think I wrote it in some blog post, and like it was a common thing when you would wake up, and this was like because I have this website. I started a website about this digital nomads, like called nomadlist.com, and it was a community. So it was like 30,000 other digital nomads because I was feeling lonely. So I built this website, and I stopped feeling lonely. Like I started organizing meetups and making friends, and it was very common that people would say they would wake up and they would forget where they are.
Yeah.
Like for the first half minute, and I had to look outside, like where am I? Which country? Which sounds really like privilege, but it's more like funny. Like you literally don't know where you are because you're so disrooted. but there's something, man, it's like Anthony Bourdain, you know? There's something pure about this kind of vagabond travel thing, you know? Like, it's behind me, I think. I don't, like, now I travel with my girlfriend, right? It's very different, but it is a romantic, like, memories of this kind of, like, vagabond, individualistic, solo life. But the thing is, it didn't make me happy. But it was very cool, but it didn't make me happy, right? It made me anxious.
There's something about it that makes you anxious. I don't know. I still feel like that. It's a cool feeling. It's scary at first, but then you realize where you are, and I don't know. It's like you awaken to the possibilities of this place when
That's
you
it.
feel like that. It's
That's
like
it.
great, and it's even when you're doing some basic travel. When I
Yeah.
go to San Francisco or something, I'll
Yeah,
feel
you have like the novelty effect. Like, you're in a new place. Like, here things are possible. You know, you don't get bored yet, and that's why people get addicted to travel. You know.
back to startups. You wrote a book on
Okay, so that was the part of the video that I was looking for or waiting for. So he kind of talked about how he came up with a bit of a solution for it. I read a bit of that article. You can go read it if you want. But basically, there's a part of it where he was talking about, because he's like building a startup or a few startups, and he mentioned that he had lived in like over 100 countries, and he talked about this travel addiction, right? So that's where there's like a misconception around like the loneliness and the digital nomad thing. So I think there's a few things that need to be like super clear here. So I can 100% see why, if you were just bouncing around, like travel addiction, like barely staying in one place. I mean, because he said he started that journey somewhere around like his mid-20s, I believe, in the article, and he can't be that much older than like 30 or so now. So given that information, I mean, because you can kind of look at him and tell, right? Like, given this information, that means that he did a ton of traveling in a really small amount of time. Even over the course of his life, like 100 countries is a lot, right? And so the reason that this is important, right, is, well, of course you're going to be lonely and maybe depressed or sad because you don't have community, because you keep uprooting yourself. Now, the one thing I see the most when like a digital nomad or remote worker type says that, they usually aren't being intentional about meeting people, right? And that's like, and then they'll say like, oh, like it wasn't what it was all cut out to be. Like, it wasn't as nice and shiny as it sounds, so I just moved back home, right? And I mean, even he said he moved back home and like it didn't feel right. The funny part about it, right, is more than likely that digital nomad that or remote worker that moved back home because they didn't have the community. I mean, this guy was talking about bouncing around so much. Well, of course, like it's hard to build that community. And then at the same time, let's just say you do stay in one place, because that makes it a lot easier to focus and build a community, build a home. Now, if you're like just sitting on your laptop in a co-working cafe, or you're even just like doing your remote job in your room, your apartment all the time, like, and you're not actually making an effort to talk to people or learn the language, like build a community, oftentimes people are a lot more welcoming than like someone might think just to begin with, right? Like he's talking about like the Thais, and I lived in Latin America too. Like, they're very welcoming, and the better you know the language, of course, it's easier. But they're already nice to you, right? So, given this information, it should be pretty obvious. Like, if you just stay in your room all day, well, no wonder they got lonely and went back home, right? If you weren't making the effort to actually be intentional, go out and socialize, get out of your comfort zone, well, of course you didn't meet new people, make friends, maybe get into a relationship, develop, business relationships, or find like a business partner or whatever, right? Like, it's obvious the reason for that. And then one other thing, it's kind of interesting that this article was on Business Insider. I see a lot of articles pop up about like, oh, like it's always like a CEO basically of like a big company, especially in the US. I mean, I know it happens across the world, but and the CEO, or like the big, the let's say upper tier worker at that X whatever company it is, they're always like, oh yeah, here are the reasons why work from home or remote work or digital nomads, like that's not successful or that's not going to be productive, blah blah blah, and they give you reasons that benefit them, right, or benefit their company. So they design things in a way where it's like, all right, like come back to work, right, come back here, come back into the office. And if you want to do that, then perfect. Now if you don't want to do that, there's a lot of studies that have been done that show, and I think it's different depending on the company and the people. But like, for example, there's a lot of studies that were done that showed that people, they were doing like 8 to 12-hour days at work or in the office. Like they would go to work and it would be like that. And especially if it was a job that could be done from home, once they started working from home, they realized that they could get that job done sooner, right? Like 8 hours turned to 6 or even 4 because they had this level of focus at home and like without the distraction. Now, I guess there's a side of this where you could say, well, I like my coworkers. I go in and socialize. Well, I mean, I guess if that's what you want, then perfect, right? Now, on the flip side, if that's not what you want, right? Like you don't go to work to socialize. I love to hear, like, if you're friends with your coworkers, then that's amazing, right? That's perfect. Now, and you can always become friends with your coworkers too. I'm just saying, like, the study here, or there's a lot of examples of people basically doing the same job in less time because they were focused. They didn't have to do the commute. They weren't in an office with like this meeting and that meeting, right? They could just get the job done in like 4 hours instead of 8, right? So truthfully, you got to think about what's best for you. And it's not selfish. I know, like, someone's like, oh, that's selfish. It's not selfish. And just think about what's best for you in that situation. Because I think a lot of articles like that are titled in a way or even written in a way where it's like trying to convince people to come back into the office when they don't need to. I mean, sometimes if you want to, great. If you don't want to, then, it's just funny. Like, it's like they're trying to, like, for those people, they're trying to kind of like lure you back in to the office. And so if you combine some of these things that we talked about, right, like you could be more productive, especially if you stay in the same place, right? Like, because this guy's talking about bouncing all between like a bunch of countries in a short amount of time. That's not going to give you the level of focus or the community that you want. Being intentional about your social life, right? So continuing to level that up, get out of your comfort zone. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about this, but I think these are like pretty common mistakes that like the remote worker, digital nomad type make. And you could easily find an amazing life for yourself in another country if you put yourself in that position, if you are a bit more intentional about it. And I hope this helps in some way. I know this was a bit of a different video, and they went on a bit of a tangent in the middle of this, but I think this will be helpful for you, especially if you're looking into this kind of lifestyle. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.